Hey everyone, my name is Shaun Rykiss. I am the writer and director as well as editor of The Brothers Rapture, which is our passion project, our BioShock short film, which we're so excited to have put out. And I'm so thankful, as is my entire crew, that you came and you watched it and hopefully enjoyed it. And we're just excited for to be able to give the world more BioShock. So thank you again for watching it, and hopefully this commentary gives you a little more insight into the project. If you have any more questions that I don't answer, head on over to our Facebook page. There's an FAQ that we put together during when we had released the trailer. So hopefully that'll answer any more questions that you have. Otherwise, drop us a comment on Facebook, send us an email. We'd be hopefully we'll get to it and answer your questions. So let's dive into it. Open with a quote from Da Vinci, which is a quote I always loved, and I felt like it summarized our story so well. Charles, being the main character, he's a man who's dealt with death several times now, both from first with his wife, who we learn later has passed on after illness, and of course through his brother Arthur. This opening sequence was one of the first images that kind of came to mind when I was writing the story, and it highlights two of the main features of BioShock that I really wanted to capture. One was the audio diary, obviously, which is the device that the game used to tell the story of the city of Rapture and the people who live there, and we likewise use throughout our story. And the second thing was the space itself. You know, right now in the present we're seeing it in its dilapidated form after the Civil War. It's set in about 1961. See the wonderful makeup, prosthetic work from our makeup artist Caitlin, who is an award-winning makeup artist and has worked on a number of feature films. She was excellent. Here we see again our dilapidated space, and we really just wanted to tell the story of one of these dozens of rooms that, as a gamer, as a player, you walk through when you're playing BioShock. We wanted to tell the story of the people who live there. You'll hear the wonderful score you're hearing was composed by Mitch, who really nailed it, I thought. The music was one of the most iconic parts of the original BioShock, and I think we were collaborated for a long time trying to create something that had the same iconic feel, and I think he nailed it. There's Jonathan, the actor who plays Arthur. He's giving a little homage to BioShock, tapping the wrench on his hand.
About this new city of Rapture as though he built it for us. Yet he wants us to build a 30-foot statue in his image for everyone to see.
You know, these opening sequences are always difficult when you're writing something for something like BioShock, where you're trying to get enough exposition in for people who don't know BioShock's story. Explaining things like Andrew Ryan and the city and whatnot. You don't want to alienate newcomers to the story, but you also want to, you don't want to talk down to people who are very much in tune with the story itself of the game. So it's always difficult to write these expositional introductions. Here, Arthur's about to find his audio diary, which, unfortunately the prop obviously is not a replica of what you see in the game, but Corey, our production designer, found this awesome little radio that fully worked and lit up, and if you held down the button, the gears rotated, but unfortunately you had to hold it down, so it wasn't ideal for when we put it, for instance, when Arthur puts it on the table and leaves it, so we couldn't get the gears to roll, unfortunately, but still stands pretty well. It as far as audio diaries go, which clearly we all have one, no, it passes pretty well. When you're working on a low to no budget film, you have to make sacrifices like that, and I think at the end of the day, a lot of the props, though they look a little rough or they don't match perfectly, they definitely sell, especially for the amount that we paid for them. Here we see Jake, who plays Mr. Tippet, which was a real fun character to write. He was actually a character that came in much later in the writing process. Initially, it was just the two brothers and their interaction. But our first assistant director, Shaun, he had a wonderful idea of, because we were debating on the best way to introduce the plasmids, and initially I just had the brothers talking about it and talking about how they saw some flyers for it or something. And Shaun had the great idea of the salesman, this door-to-door salesman who comes in. And you know, a bunch of people were commenting in the trailer how this kind of character doesn't suit the selling of plasmids, because we're so used to seeing, you know, Sinclair Solutions and how Ryan Industries was selling plasmids. But people forget that Fontaine was peddling. He's the one who developed plasmids and Atom, and he was peddling it long before Ryan, you know, quote unquote, killed him and took over his business. So this Jake or Mr. Tippet was kind of my little nod to Fontaine before, you know, obviously the events of the war. Now here's an example of, you know, I love this prop, I really do. Yes, it's rough around the edges, and you know, especially when you show it in a close-up, which is always a decision that you struggle with when a prop doesn't look the best. You generally want to avoid showing in close-ups, but it's such an important item and it's such an iconic item. You know, we decided to keep it in the close-up in there. It sells so well. I mean, some people will be upset by it. I love the props in this movie. Again, especially on the budget that we had. I think they look fantastic. And when you're holding it in your hand and you're thinking to yourself, "Oh, this is," you know, you turn on the lights. It's an awesome feeling.
I've seen the magic you two have made with these tools of yours. What if I was
I actually did all the visual effects, and that was a real challenge because I'm not a visual effects artist. I'm self-taught through Video Copilot and various other you know, forums and websites, and especially for a BioShock movie, I really wanted to nail it. We wanted to hire somebody, but it just wasn't in our budget. So there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of green screen that doesn't, you know, the motion tracking's not great, or, you know, these hands, which I think, again, they sell pretty well, but by no means would you think that they're real ice hands. You know, it was a lot of fun. It was a real challenge for me. And there's a lot of stuff I would have liked to have touched up, but I was using school facilities, so after I graduated I couldn't go back. So there's a lot that I had to live with, especially after you deliver to your colorist to do color correction. There really wasn't any opportunity to go back and touch things up. So hey, you live and die by your work. I'm proud of the work I did, but I certainly would hire somebody in the future to do their job. Emma was a really important part of the story to me. Obviously, it's incredibly important to Charles, and it defines, you know, all the decisions he's made to get here. You know, Arthur has convinced Charles to come and live in this place to try to get him away from his sorrow and his misery, because Arthur can see the potential. You know, in my mind, actually, I guess I should talk about it a little bit. You know, the brothers are in my mind, the brothers were the sculptors, the bronze sculptors who Andrew Ryan invited there to create, like, you know, when you first walk into the lighthouse in the original BioShock and you just see this giant sculpture of Andrew Ryan. These two made it, and in my mind, and that's what they're talking about actually in the beginning of the movie. Andrew Ryan asking them to build a 30-foot statue in his image. You know, that was important to me, to kind of create an homage to that. And I like the idea of these two creating all of the bronze work that you see in the city.
Liar! Where are you now? Your words of unity.
Coming up, you're gonna see Charles smash the audio diary. This was a difficult thing to shoot. We got really lucky on it because we only had this one prop, especially when you're working on a small budget. First of all, rule of thumb: always buy 3. Always buy 3. Always make 3. Obviously, in the case of an independent film or low-budget film, that's not always possible, as with us. But we designed this entire shooting day. This was our last day of shooting, where we destroyed the room a little bit. We designed the entire shooting schedule around that prop and smashing it and we ended up getting it on the second try. Thank goodness. The first try, it shattered, but it bounced out of frame, and we really needed it to land in frame. So we got really lucky on that second try.
This stuff's supposed to
Now this scene, the injection scene, is easily my favorite scene in the movie.
disappointing if there wasn't a little pain.
I mean, the relationship between the brothers was the most important thing to me, both as a writer and a director. And this scene, well, first of all, it's the only scene that we have in the film where they're actually happy and they're reminiscing about good times. And I think the actors really nailed it too. And it's juxtaposed so harshly by the violence of the injection that they're about to do. It was really interesting. Composing the scene was really interesting to me, and especially both on sound design and music. You know, we were debating, especially in sound design, how animated we wanted to get with the injection, and we decided that we really wanted it to be as visceral and realistic, and as realistic as injecting yourself with superpowers can be. But we really wanted to enhance the creepy factor and that chilling factor. So I think the guys really nailed it. And then there's that bone-chilling scream, which I love so much. And then we get to the 1 year later card, and this doesn't always hurt me a little bit, because you know, the most interesting part of this story should be the brothers experimenting with the plasmids and playing with them, and especially for a low-budget student film with very limited shooting time, you're always trying to find ways to, especially with a BioShock movie, you're always trying to find ways to show as much as possible. But unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. So I had to throw in this, 1 year fast forward bit where we get to 1959, as the calendar says, and try to, through dialogue and exposition, try to, give a feel for how the last year went. Visual imagery is always, in my opinion, stronger imagery and a stronger storyteller than dialogue can be. And really, this scene was just about getting to Arthur's reveal and seeing that he's all spliced up. Some people will probably wonder why Charles is not spliced up, because obviously he also has been using Adam and plasmids. In my mind, Charles has been he's been shying away from it. He'll sculpt ice, in his spare time here and there, but he really enjoys the work that I mean, both of them really enjoy the work that they do, but Charles was always the talented one. Charles is the main sculptor, and Arthur's always served as more of the assistant, which he's proud of doing because he loves the work that they do. But once Arthur's finally gotten a taste of true power and gained the ability to create with his hands, he's become a bit obsessed with creating more and surpassing the achievements that they've created.
Mountains.
And then we have our true splicer. This was so much fun. I mean, seeing Jake in full makeup again, the amazing prosthetic work from Caitlin and her and Ashley, her assistant. Oh, when Jake stepped onto that set, looking like that's when we knew we were making a BioShock movie.
Know what we're doing here, does he?
And Jake really likes to immerse himself in his character too, and he was a lot of fun to work with while he was in this particular version of his character.
Wants to know if he can borrow yours?
A little scary too.
Won't you spare us some?
Tippet, you don't look well. Perhaps you should.
And interestingly, Jake had not played BioShock, and he hadn't actually even seen a splicer before. He built this version of a splicer off of the script and off of our conversations, and either way, he still managed to really nail the actions and the feel and the mannerisms of what we experienced in the game. I love this effect. Oh, and the effect in combination with the scream, and then again this excellent makeup work. I thought that just really looked sweet. And this is that moment where that really defined, you know, this as a BioShock film for me, because BioShock is just it just seeps and drips with sorrow and misery but masochistic misery of it's filled with people who've made decisions that will haunt them for the rest of their lives, and I love this pull away where, you know, we almost see the true antagonist of the film, which is the plasmids, kind of looking down on the brothers. And then we get to our final sequence here, where you know, this was an interesting sequence to cut because this flashback that we see wasn't in the initial script. It's something that came up in the editing process. We were trying to find a more interesting way to tie things up, and even though flashbacks can be a bit cheesy, and hey, I'll be the first one to admit that there's quite a bit of cheese in this film, I felt like it was a good device to again to tie things up, and yeah. And then we see Charles pulling out the clay, which represents, you know, the traditional ways of doing the work that him and his brother did, and this was an image that was really strong and resonated for me. Was Charles using the ice that he created from the plasmids in combination with the clay, which is the old ways, combining the old ways and the new to move forward and start anew, and that's where we leave him. Maybe he's somewhere still lingering in Rapture. And that's the brothers' Rapture. It was such an incredible project to work on. I mean, working on a BioShock movie is always going to be great, but it was such a great learning experience. And that's incredibly important to mention, is that this was our final project at Vancouver Film School this past year. And you know, so there's going to be lots of stuff that you'll see that's rough around the edges. You know, again, visual effects is not something that we learnt, because we were learning film production. We were learning how to create a movie from scratch, and you know, something like visual effects, which is incredibly important in our. I mean, it's such a deep part of filmmaking these days. That was, you know, the effects that we had in there was just a bonus. So really, this project was about all of us, including, you know, for example, our sound team, which you see listed there. Everyone involved in this was either a student or formerly a student recently, and really was creating this from the love of filmmaking, or for BioShock, or for helping out, you know, our classmates. So, you know, even though again there's some things that were rough, there were a lot of mistakes that were made, a lot of challenges faced. You know, we wouldn't have had it any other way, and it was truly an incredible project to work on that I had so much fun doing, and really I can't wait for the next one. So, on that note, I hope you enjoyed this commentary. I hope you enjoyed the film as well. Stick around and you know, subscribe to our channels, check out our websites, and we hope to bring you something awesome soon.